thank you for joining. So my name is Monica Gaertner, and I'm going to be doing the What's New webinar for Hydro GeoAnalyst 2016.1. So what we're going to go through today is the updates and changes to Hydro GeoAnalyst with the latest release of 2016.1. It was actually just released a couple weeks ago. So we're going to go through the Scene Viewer module as well as the Well Profile module. There have been a lot of changes to those two modules, as well as the Quick Checker, and then just a comment on supporting Windows 10 and SQL Server 2014, as well as a few other miscellaneous things that I'd like to let you know have changed within HGA. And then, as I said, at the end I will unmute the lines and I will open it up for questions. So let's start with the Scene Viewer. We've replaced the 3D Explorer module within HGA with a Scene Viewer. So what you're going to notice is a faster response time. You're not going to see the delay when you're rotating the scene on the axes that you would have seen in the old 3D Explorer. It's going to be a much smoother response time, much quicker for you to be able to turn around on all the different axes and get an idea of what's going on at your site. The other thing is the Scene Viewer opens up as a tab within HGA, and you can actually have multiple scenes loaded at once. So you can be looking at different parts, different objects of your project at the same time within multiple scenes. So any saved 3D views that you had in your project previously are going to be turned into scenes when you upgrade to 2016.1. The other difference is they're going to now contain live links to the information that's in the database. So with the old 3D Explorer, your 3D views were in fact a snapshot in time. So when you created them, the information regarding the stations and the cross sections, whatever information you loaded into the 3D view was just a snapshot. Now with the scenes, we have a live link back to the database. So if you were to make changes to your cross section, make changes to, say, the soil information for the stations, when you hit refresh in the scene, that new information is going to come right from the database into the scene. Also, the Scene Viewer is able to display deviated or non-vertical wells. It does this by using the inclination and the azimuth values that are stored in the drilling protocol table. So it will automatically show deviated or angled boreholes. There's a number of different words used to describe it. Essentially anything that's off of the non-vertical. So we need both the inclination and the azimuth values in the drilling protocol table in order to be able to show that. So let's take a look at the Scene Viewer. It will have a similar layout to the 3D Explorer if you've looked at that one before, if you've been familiar with that module. The viewer window is the main portion, what you're seeing here. And now what we have is a scene tree that stores in a nice organized fashion all of the different objects that you can load into the viewer window. When you select something on the scene tree, the settings for that appropriate object are going to be found below. And so we've done a lot of work to organize the settings in a more logical way in order to help you find the setting that you want to change. So whatever you select up at the top here, you can find the setting to change things like the color of certain things, the size, etc. You can also enter data into your scene a lot quicker and easier than you could with the 3D Explorer. So just by clicking on the green plus, you have a dialog box that will allow you to bring into the scene your station groups, your cross sections, and your plumes. So all of your project information will show up here, and then you can just select the objects that you want and the blue arrow to move them into the scene. You can also remove them using this blue arrow to move them back. Additionally, you have this option down at the bottom here for external files. So for example, you have surface files, DXF files, image files, these need to be georeferenced, as well as shape files. So you can select all of your project items as well as your files all at once and load them directly into the 3D scene. So this makes it much quicker and easier than the old 3D Explorer. So let's take a look at some examples. Here I've simply loaded the stations from the station group boreholes in our demo project. And you can see all of the different lithologies are displayed, and you can also see that some wells are deviated. I have another view of that a little bit closer so that you can see what's going on. You can also load your cross section. So the other nice thing is, and that's different from the 3D Explorer, is with the scene viewer you can actually grab your station groups or your cross sections from the project tree and drag and drop them right into the scene. So again, just another way to make things easier for you to load right into the scene. Sorry, I'm just muting anyone who's joining me a little bit later, just so that everyone can hear me speaking and we don't have the feedback. So as I was mentioning, you can also display deviated or non-vertical wells. This information that's stored in the drilling protocol table, the inclination and the azimuth, are used in order to display your non-vertical or deviated wells right in the scene viewer. So we can also display our plumes just like the previous module, the 3D Explorer. The scene viewer displays the plumes automatically as a isosurface, as you see here, but you do also have the option to generate color maps. You can generate color maps as a horizontal or a vertical slice. You can also generate color maps based on a cross-section slice. So similar functionality that we had previously, but as I was saying, you can now do this much quicker. The load time and the response time is much quicker in the new scene viewer. You can also load additional files. So for example, you can load DXFs, including 3D DXFs, which weren't previously supported, as well as surface files. So quickly and easily to load these files, you just click on the green plus and browse to where the files are. So I was mentioning you can also load shape files. Here's an example of the shape files. Now just to clarify, in the scene tree up at the top here, obviously your station groups will be found under the station groups node, the cross sections under the cross section nodes. The site maps node will contain your shape files as well as your DXF files and your image files. So all of those are going to show up under the site maps node, and they're going to have different icons so that you know which one is which. And as I mentioned, as you select the item in the tree, you will find the associated settings here at the bottom. So here, for example, we've loaded a shape file that contains polygons, points, and lines. So you have all of the options here to adjust the color and the width of the lines and the size of the points, etc., so that you can quickly and easily adjust the view to suit your needs. We also have the ability to bring in georeferenced image files. So this was the same as previous, and one of the options that clients really liked that we made sure to bring forward from the old 3D Explorer into our scene viewer is this option to drape an image over a surface. So if you bring in both an image and a surface into your scene, you will find on the settings for the image this option either to use a specified elevation, so you can have your image as a flat slice at any elevation within the scene, or you have this option to drape it over a surface. So if, for example, you have an elevation surface, you can drape the image of the site on top of that, and then the image will take on the shape of the surface. So now let's move on to the next module, the well profile. So the well profile has been updated so that it contains all of the designer capabilities that used to be in the separate BHLP or borehole log plotter module. So again, you're going to find that the well profile is having a much faster response time when you are changing stations as you're flipping through the stations than when you were using the old BHLP module. And same as with the scene viewer, any of your old BHLP templates that you had stored on your project tree are going to be automatically converted to well profile templates when you upgrade your project. So that means when you double click on the template on the project tree, it will now launch the well profile tab and display that template as opposed to launching the BHLP. So within the Well Profile tab, you can do all of the same designer things that you used to have to do within the BHLP. You can add columns, you can delete columns, you can edit the way that the columns look, you can reorder them, etc. And also all of those settings are accessed from the editor portion of the Well Profile tab. We've also implemented a couple of nicer functionalities or features, within the well profile. So previously the scale column was always shown as a depth. You could use a bit of a workaround to display it as an elevation, but now all it is a simple flip of the switch in the settings, and it will automatically use the elevation value stored in your station table to calculate elevations instead of showing as depths. Additionally, the templates can now be set to show true vertical depth. So if you do have deviated or angled boreholes, it can calculate the true vertical depth of your borehole data based on the inclination values that you have stored in the drilling protocol table. So let's take a look. So here's the Well Profile tab. Previously, the Well Profile would simply display the template that you had created in the BHLP. Now you have an option to put this template into edit mode, and that's going to open up the left-hand side designer portion, where you have the design tree up at the top, and whenever you're selecting the different columns in your design here, you're going to have the associated settings down here. So we're keeping in the same theme so that you can more quickly and easily find the settings that you want in order to adjust the display to look however you wish for it to look. So within the well profile, you have the same columns that were previously available within the BHLP. You have the option to put the scale column, that's just a basic fixed type of column. You have the well construction column, that's going to be automatically mapped to the well construction category tables. So for example, it's automatically going to pull information from the casing table, the screen table, the drilling protocol table, the even the lithology table. It'll pull that information, and it'll pull the water level information as well. Then we also have the lithology table, lithology column. That is another one that's automatically mapped to the lithology table. It's just a basic column that's going to show the soil classification that you have and the name of the soils. So a basic interval column. Then we have the flexible interval columns and depth columns. These columns, you can decide what you want to map them to. You can map them either to tables or to queries. So the interval column will expect that you have a table or a query with a from and a to value, as well as some sort of measurement or some sort of description of what occurred in that interval. Then you have the depth column, which is expecting you to have either, it's going to expect you to have a depth value and then a description or a value that's associated with that depth. And then finally we have the plot column. This is going to allow you to display either depth or interval series on the plot. So again, depending on what you're plotting, if it's a depth or an interval, you either need the from and the to with a value or the depth with a value to display it as a plot. And so we had an example here where you have the plot column. This is showing two different series at the same time. It's showing your resistivity values as well as your gamma values so that you can do some analysis side by side. So let's look at some of the new settings that make things a little bit easier within the well profile. So one of the settings that I was describing to you was the option to use a scale column with depth or with elevation values. So by default, it's going to display as depth values. Here you can see this is the GBO1 from our demo project, and it goes from 0 to 100. However, if I switch the flag for show elevation from no to yes, you'll see that it automatically pulls the elevation from the station table and displays your scale as an elevation. So previously this needed a bit of a workaround within the old BHLP in order to get it to do this. Now another example is the true vertical depth. So by default, the design template is going to not be using true vertical depth. If you wish for it to display true vertical depth, you simply need to switch that flag. So here you can see this station is also 100 meters deep, so it goes from an elevation of 333 to 233. However, when you look at the inclination for this station, you switch the flag for true vertical depth to yes, you'll notice that the scale is actually only going from 333 to 239, as it lost some depth based on the inclination that this well was drilled at. Okay, so those are just some of the nice simple settings that you can adjust within the well profile now to make things easier to display as you need for your projects. Now let's move on to the Quick Checker. The Quick Checker is the module within the EDD workflow, and the EDD is simply an electronic data deliverable. It is the tool that you use to validate your data. So it's the second step in the three-step workflow. The first step remains the same, the EDD template designer, where you specify the table and the fields that you are wanting to collect the data for, and any of the rules that you want against those fields. The Quick Checker is that second step, where you then take that template and you bring your data in and you validate your data against the requirements of the template. The third step is the import of the EDD, and that hasn't changed either. It's just the Quick Checker that we've changed. And the way we've changed it is this module is now installed with HGA, and it's launched right from within HGA. It is no longer an Excel plugin. So the Excel plugin had several setup and configuration prerequisites that often caused difficulties for people to get up and running with an Excel plugin. So we've decided to make this its own module within HGA. So it automatically comes when you install HGA 2016. Now, if you're used to being able to run the Quick Checker on a machine, on a laptop or a desktop that does not have HGA, we do also have the Quick Checker as a standalone installation. So if you, for an example, had some some students over the summer who were collecting data and you were having them use the Quick Checker, you could install just the Quick Checker for them on their machine without the need for HGA. You simply provide them the EDD template. They would do the Quick Checker, the validation, and provide you back the EDD template, or sorry, the EDD validated data. Now, when we were redesigning the Quick Checker to run within HGA, we also added the option of importing an Excel worksheet, because we were finding when people were using the Quick Checker, they were spending a lot of time copying and pasting from one Excel spreadsheet into the Excel plugin Quick Checker. So we wanted to make sure that we made it simple and easy for you to be able to just bring that data in. So let's take a look. When you launch the Quick Checker, like I said, it's going to launch right from within HGA, just with the green check mark in the main toolbar. When you start a new Quick Checker file, you're going to have the option to select your EDD template, and for the data entry, you can either manually enter data or you can import it from the selected file. The manual import is nice if you are, for example, having to transcribe a lot of data coming from hard copy reports. So you just open up the template, it provides you the headers for all of the columns that you need to populate, and you can go ahead and enter the data. However, if you have an Excel file already that contains some data, you can use the option to import directly from the Excel file. So here's an example where I was using a lithology EDD that specified the fields that are needed in order to enter the data into my project, and then I can map it to my Excel spreadsheet and automatically bring that data in to be validated. Now, if I have some columns in my EDD that are not in my Excel spreadsheet, I can simply specify to add an empty column, and then I can manually enter that data myself afterwards. So this way you can actually import and do manual data entry at the same in the same process. So let's take a look. Here I brought in some lithology data, just some basic stuff, the station, the from, the to, the soil type, and a description. In this case, the color and the odor information was not available. So same as with the old quick checker that was a plugin, you have the validate and submit option. So when it does the validation, it checks your data against that EDD template that you used. Any errors or issues with your data will show up here in the error bar. You can double click on any of these errors and it will bring you right to the row. So this is convenient, especially if you have a lot of data and a lot of records. It will bring you right to the row where the issue occurs. So for example, certain fields cannot be empty. So it's okay for the color and the odor to be empty, but you must specify the station name and you must specify the to values. This is based on the EDD template, which is based on your database in HGA. You must specify the station that the data goes to, and for the lithology table, the from and to is the primary key, and it cannot be null or it cannot be blank. So once you've adjusted your data and you've fixed all of these errors, when you hit the validate and submit and no more errors are found, it creates that submit package. So the same package that the old quick checker that was a plugin would create. It's a zip HGA file. So this zip HGA file is what you would use in the EDD import in the data transfer system. So our DTS has the EDD option where it recognizes the zip HGA file, and very quickly with a couple of clicks it goes through that zip HGA file, gets all of the data, and brings it into the database. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we also have provided Windows 10 support. So currently we do support running HGA on Windows 7, Windows 8.1, as well as Windows 10. And we support the SQL 2012 as well as SQL 2014 versions. Just so that you know, Microsoft has stopped supporting the older versions of SQL Server. So if you're still running the SQL 2008 R2 version, or even older, the SQL 2005, those versions of SQL Server are no longer supported by Microsoft, and therefore we can no longer support them either. We also support, same as previously, the local DB edition of SQL, as well as the SQL Express and the full-fledged SQL Server. So when you install HGA, the local database, the SQL Server 2014 local database, is installed along with HGA. So this allows you to get started very quickly. You have the option to work on your own local database. If, however, you need to work with others, so you want multiple people to be accessing the same project, you would need to look at using the full-fledged SQL Server edition, which of course does have costs associated with it, or you can use the SQL Express, which you can configure to allow for multiple people to access with some configuration. So some miscellaneous items that I wanted to go through just so that you are aware of what to expect when you upgrade your projects. So when you upgrade a project, essentially just by opening it in HGA 2016, it will do a check on all of your user tables to ensure that you have a primary key on all of them. So what we found was in the past we didn't require this, and this did cause some issues for certain projects, essentially because it was causing difficulties recognizing which record you were wanting to update or delete. And so we now require primary keys on all those tables. So if it finds a table that does not have a primary key, what it will do is it will simply assign an auto increment, so just every record gets a number, and set that as the primary key so that you can carry on with your database otherwise the exact same. We've also added some pagination options for large-scale projects. So if you have projects on a larger scale where, for example, you might have 100,000 stations, or you might have hundreds of thousands of records, say in the results table or the water level table, or even some of our larger scale projects had millions of records in some of those tables. You could find a bit of a delay in displaying all of those records all at once. So with the pagination options, you can specify how many records per page are going to be displayed. So as an example, if you have 100,000 stations, when you hit the all stations station group, the station list is going to display all 100,000. Well, now the pagination by default is set to 10,000 records. So it will display the first 10,000 records for you, and then in the background it will continue to load the next page of 10,000 and the next page of 10,000, so that you can more quickly load and start working within the different data tabs. Now, another difference that we made to 2016 that you'll notice right away is in the project tree there is now a station picker, and this sort of unifies how you pick a station for the various data tabs that you're using to display single station information. So the station data tab, the well profile tab, etc. We've also made it uniform how you show down at the bottom or up at the top is the current station, but down at the bottom the number of rows and the number of selected rows. We just wanted to make things a little bit more consistent. Additionally, we have updated the data filter tab. I'm going to show you this in just 1 second. It essentially makes use of the standard tree that you're used to seeing within HGA instead of having to pick from a very long pick list of tables. And then we also have an option to show all the tables in a category in multiple lines on the station data tab. So let's take a look at some of those things. So here on the main view of HGA, the first thing you'll notice here in the project tree is that you now have a station picker. So you can go through the stations here very quickly. Whatever station group you have selected up on the top here will then be reflected down in the station picker. You can switch between having both the project tree and the station picker displayed on top of each other, or you can have them side by side where you just flip back and forth, and that's just these two options here. Okay. Also, I was saying how it's made more obvious what is the currently selected station. So you'll see this on the station data tab as well as on the well profile tab to very bold highlight what station you're looking at. We also mentioned that you have the option to display the tables in multiple lines. So this is convenient, say, for a category like the geophysics category where you have an awful lot of tables. So previously you had to scroll through all of the different tabs for each of the different tables, and now you have an option where you can just see all of them all at once, whether it's 2 rows of tables or 3 rows of tables. You can see them all and you can find the table that you're looking for a little bit quicker. I also mentioned down at the bottom here, the number of rows are displayed on all of the data tabs as well as the number of selected stations, just to make things a little bit more consistent among all the different tabs. Okay, then, oh, one other thing that I wanted to show you was the data filter tab. So I was mentioning that we kind of updated this one, and what we did was instead of having a drop down that had a list of all of your tables, which could get quite long actually to find the table you're looking for, instead we've implemented the tree view that you're used to seeing in the template manager, in the query builder, in the list editor, where you have all of the categories, and then when you open up the categories you can select the different tables, and then you can carry on with the same data filter option, so you can run against an entire table. You can get all the records for all the stations in a table, and then you can delete records from here, you can export records from here, etc. So one of the other things that I wanted to mention is we are having a special online training course on Friday, May 27th. It's a half-day training course that's going to cover in more details the well profile and the scene viewer. So the two very big new features and functionalities in HGA 2016. It's only $99.99, that's in US, and if you're interested in taking this course, it's a maybe 3 to 4 hour course, please contact our sales department at sales@waterloo-hydrogeologic.com, and they'd be happy to give you more information. So now what I'm going to do is open up the lines. I'm going to unmute everyone, and if you have any questions, please let me know.